verse 20, this provides enlightenments for the people and guidance and mercy for those who are certain. So people who are actually certain inside their hearts, people who are certain about the hereafter, those are the ones that God will guide, and those are the ones that, this Quran is meant for, providing mercy and enlightenments and guidance, right? Other people that are there, I mean, it just adds on to their hypocrisy, and it adds on to their retribution, because people end up rejecting or disregarding certain commandments and going against them. It ends up, going against God's scripture while having the knowledge, so that hurts them. But the people who are actually righteous and people who have attained certainty about these revelations, they're the ones who are going to be protected by God, who are going to be guided by God. For those people, Quran provides enlightenment and guidance. It increases their guidance. They see the path forward clearly. But the people who don't have the certainty, they are just confused and led in various directions. And you have good examples of that with people who are like, pure Quranists, who don't believe in the Messenger of the Covenant, or may not believe in the Quran's mathematical code. And the more they read the Quran, the more misguided they are. Even like they start getting rid of things that are part of the religion, like the Salat, the Hajj, and so many other things, and they just keep coming up with absurd ideas from looking at the verses of the Quran, but not being able to grasp the true meaning. Verse 21, do those who work evil expect that we will treat them in the same manner as those who believe and lead a righteous life? Can their life and their death be the same? Wrong indeed is their judgment. And we see the footnote says that we now realize that the righteous do not really die. They go straight to heaven, 1632, while the unrighteous are beaten up by the angels of death, 850 and 4727. So this is a rhetorical question that God is asking the people, is what we expect for, two different types of people, two completely different types of creatures. You have the righteous people who have their free will and the choice to worship God alone or not, and they decided to worship God alone, dedicate their lives to God, right? And then you have people who were evil, who decided to go against God, who decided to disregard the commandments, who decided to cause evil and chaos and murdered people or victimized people left and right. I mean, do you expect their life and their death to be the same? There are people who think that their life and their death will be the same. And when we say life and death, like, we're not even just talking about the afterlife, right? Just life and death in this world is not going to be the same. And we have the footnote here, for example, that talks about the death part, right? It says that their death is not going to be the same. It may appear to be the same from the outside, but for some people, it may be confusing to understand. But from the inside, from that person's own perspective, they will experience hell if they're unrighteous. If they're righteous people, their life, before any misery, any pain, anything to them, God will take them away. God will send the angels. They will come and ask them to leave their bodies, invite them to enter paradise, welcome them, kindly, gently take their souls and welcome them into paradise. And paradise begins right here in this world for these people, right? Like, as far as death is concerned, I'm talking about the actual paradise, right? But as far as the disbelievers go, I mean, when their death comes, they will first go through the excruciating pain and misery, and they will see death in front of them. They will see what is waiting for them. The angels will come, start beating them up. Their literal hell, in a very literal sense, will almost begin, even though hell itself is not created. The miserable retribution that's going to continue is going to start from right there, and then they're going to have continuous nightmares, which the nightmares, as we know, can be very real. And when you're in a nightmare, you don't even know it's a nightmare, but you're experiencing everything. Your body is even reacting to all of the horrors and the traumas. You're terrified. You may be sweating even. Your body even may be sweating. But the thing is, like, they'll just continue to witness the misery and the hell that they're gonna eventually see. Their souls start experiencing it, even though they're not actually in hell, even though the hell is actually not created. But then there's another part of it, which is the part in this world, like the messenger of the covenant, how he explains the lives of the believers, because God promises the believers they're going to have victory in this world and the hereafter, and God promises them joy and happiness in this world and in the hereafter. So we understand that the life and death of the believers, when we talk about life, we're talking about, while they're alive, the time that they spend in this world, after they pass their admissions test is going to be very different. They're going to be in peace, they're going to enjoy, they're going to have happiness, they're going to have all their needs met, they're going to live a carefree life where they will not have any kinds of problems, right? But the disbelievers, on the other hand, will have all sorts of misery and all sorts of chaos going on in their minds and in their lives. They'll be unhappy, they'll be miserable, and then when the death comes itself, death is also going to be a very terrible experience for these people, as God tells us, right? And so God is letting them know that this is the truth. Their life and their death is not the same. There are people who say that their lives are the same. I mean, I heard one of the very old people who were submitters from around the time of the messenger, saying that their lives will just the same as the lives of the disbelievers, except the only difference is, they said that the difference between the believers and the disbelievers is that the believers will just submit and be at peace with it, and the disbelievers will not be. So because they're at peace with it, they're going to be relatively happier, because they're not objecting. But we understand it to be totally different, I mean, you're not going to have any problems, you're not even going to have any headaches, you're not even going to get any traffic tickets, for example, and these are minor things, right? So you're not going to have any problem whatsoever unless you step out of God's kingdom and you get those pinches. If you follow the system, if you follow God's laws, you're not going to have any problems, right? And that shows that their life and their death is going to be completely different. Verse 22, God created the heavens and the earth for a specific purpose, in order to pay each soul for whatever it earned, without the least injustice. And the footnote says, God granted us this life as a precious chance to redeem ourselves, denounce our ancient alliance with Satan, and rejoin God's kingdom. See introduction and appendix 7. So God created the heavens and the earth for a specific purpose, in order to pay each soul for whatever it earned, right? So the specific purpose for which this earth has been created should be on our minds all day, which we should remember that and not lose that purpose, when we're living in this world. We have to understand that, I'm not here to work, I'm not here to study or whatever it is that you're doing. Your main purpose behind all of this is to worship God alone, is to be redeemed by God. That's why you were sent here. So while you're doing all these things, of course you're going to have to do these things. So while you're doing these things, make sure your bigger purpose is with you, right? Because people lose the focus. Like, people lose the bigger picture. I mean, many people talk about the bigger picture, but they don't know what the bigger picture is. But the bigger picture is this, that, we're sent here. Our main purpose in this world is to worship God, to show our alliance with God, to practice His laws, to show our appreciation to God. And this is why we are here. And so we shouldn't, no matter what happens in our lives, we should not lose that focus. Verse 23, common form of idolatry, the ego as a god. Have you noted the one whose god is his ego? Consequently, God sends him astray. Despite his knowledge, seals his hearing in his mind, and places a veil on his eyes. Who then can guide him after such a decision by God? Would you not take heed? So we understand that the ego is something that caused our downfall. The ego is something that prevented us from repenting when the opportunity was given to us. We did not want to come down as a horse or a dog or a donkey. We wanted to come out as dignified human beings and make the choice using our intellect, right? And you can see how that is not working for most humans. But this is something that we decided to become a part of because of our egos. And so that's why egos are very, very dangerous, and we have to be aware of that. I mean, I think it's really, it's like a ticking bomb for a lot of people. And even though people decide to become submitters, many people, at some point, it gets ticked off. For some people it takes a lot, for others it doesn't take a lot. Like for some people, their ego can get ticked off just by something very small. Like someone can tell them something to correct them, let's say. I mean, and that's the only thing they need really to get their ego to get ticked off, and they immediately go in the opposite direction, right? And for other people, their ego could also easily be ticked off. Like you could say something nice to them, and whoa, like, their head is in the clouds, and that's it. And then you start thinking you're better than most people. You start thinking that your opinion matters more than God's or the messengers, and and you start coming up with your own ideas that you fall in love with. And there's so many traps, right? Set based on our egos. And if you think about it, a lot of humans will spend most of their time thinking about themselves as a result, right? I mean, if you're honest to yourself, just think about how many times you think about yourself versus God. How many times you think about your own interests and your own image, let's say, or what people think of you, and how you look, or how certain people may perceive certain actions. I mean, just think about it, right? It's if it's not more than God's, at least it's a very considerable portion of you, which is kind of difficult not to do for a lot of people, right? But it's something that we have to constantly fight. You're here to worship God alone. I mean, don't fall in love with yourself or your opinions. You have to fall in love with God, and you have to fall in love with His teachings, and you have to follow the teachings and subdue your ego. And God gives us, many circumstances in our life, many situations in our life where, if you have a big ego, like, you can see the reality. Like, you cannot even help yourself. For example, if you like as it says in the footnote, you cannot even control your the times you have to go to the bathroom, for example, right? You have no power. You don't know how it works. But God is controlling everything. So don't get on a high horse and start thinking that you're somebody, because we are sent here as servants of God to worship God and kill our ego and follow His commandments and really follow the guidance. And if there are things that you don't understand, instead of jumping to conclusions and thinking that the messenger made a mistake or something like that. I mean, you should think about, like, maybe you're not understanding something correctly at this point, right? Or maybe if someone else reminds you, just instead of thinking that this person is misguided or this person doesn't get it, think about maybe God could have guided this person more than you, and maybe you need to keep an open mind, right? And think about it. So these are just some of the examples, right? And then also just making sure that you think about God more than yourself, and you remind yourself and worship God, do commemoration, think about Him, seek refuge in God from Satan, because Satan wants you to be obsessed with your own self rather than, thinking about God and what matters, being caught up in your own problems, right? I mean, that's another way of making another God besides God. I mean, people tend to create problems, when they don't have problems, so that they can think about them. So we shouldn't be like that, and we should remember the big picture, remember why we are here, and keep our focus towards God alone. Verse 24, they said, we only live this life, we live and we die, and only time causes our death. They have no sure knowledge about this, they only conjecture. When our revelations are recited to them clearly, their only argument is to say, bring back our forefathers if you're truthful. Say, God has granted you life, then He puts you to death. Then He will summon you to the day of resurrection, which is inevitable, but most people do not know. To God belongs all sovereignty of the heavens and the earth. The day, the hour, judgment comes to pass, that is when the falsifiers lose. Kneeling. You will see every community kneeling. Every community will be called to view their record. Today, you get paid for everything you have done. So, this is the verse 24 here, is talking about something that most people commonly believe, right? Because they say we only live this life, we live and we die, and only time causes our death. And you see people talk about, you only live once, right? So this is what it means, YOLO, which means you only live this life and you die, and only time causes your death. They don't even think, you got old, whatever, it was part of it, and you die. And if you die before that, they think that, you died too quickly, you were not supposed to die. This person was not supposed to die, and so and so killed them or whatever. And they don't understand that, death doesn't come from time, it comes from the time that is designated for you. It's not just that the fact that you're just getting old and you're dying. It's not that the time is causing the death. Someone just dies. They either think, oh, someone killed him, so they died, or they just died on their own. But the reality is, it was their time to leave. So, this was a time that their exit was planned, and so they had to go. It was over for them, and God is the one who controls that. Nobody else. It's not time; it's God that controls our life and death, and so they don't believe in the hereafter. Which is, and they just guess. They use conjecture and guesswork, as the verses point out, and they say that when God's revelations are recited to them, they say, "Bring back our forefathers if you're truthful." So they want to see their grandfather and great-grandfather brought to life when you tell them to believe in the hereafter. But the thing is, believing in the hereafter has nothing to do with that, right? And they're not supposed to come back. It's part of the hereafter. Nobody's going to come back until it is the day of judgment. So, having these kind of expectations is just these people leading themselves astray. And so the Quran is telling us here that God has granted us life. He puts us to death when the time comes, and then He will bring us back on the day of resurrection. And God says that this is inevitable. Nobody can prevent it from happening. It's bound to come, and we cannot do anything about it. We cannot stop it. It's a process that we are in, that we accepted to be a part of. So eventually we are going to have to face it. As scary as it may sound to a lot of people, and it is, rightfully, because it decides the rest of your eternity. There's no other way to understand it, and so it is going to be really heavy, as the Quran says, and it's going to be very critical for our rest of our life. So we have to be worried about that for sure, but worried about it in a way that we're going to do something about it. We're going to lead the life that God wants us to lead. But these people, instead of doing that, they find it an easier option to just deny it, so they don't have to face the reality. They don't have to work righteousness. They don't have to believe in God. They don't have to do any of the practices, just by pretending that it's not going to happen. Which is kind of like the example, like if you see like an ostrich, when the ostrich sees danger, she decides to stick her head in the ground so that she can't perceive anything, and she can't see the danger. But this doesn't take the danger away. If there's an animal coming to eat the ostrich, and the ostrich buries her head in the sand, it's not going to save the ostrich, right? The ostrich is most likely going to be eaten. And so it's a similar example. When the hereafter, when the humans are told that the hereafter is coming, they just decide to deny it because they don't want to face it. And they're disbelievers, they're evil people, so they don't want to face it, and they decide to disbelieve in it. Their jinns will help them in that direction, and their evil soul will help them in that direction. But God says, this is what's eventually going to happen, and you cannot do anything about it except to prepare for it. And verse 27 says, "To God belongs all sovereignty of the heavens and the earth. The day the hour of judgment comes to pass, that is when the false fires lose." And then God says that every community on that day will be kneeling. Now we know that kneeling is an expression of, like, total submission. You're bowing down and you're kneeling on your knees, in front of God. Because you're God's servants. In reality, we're going to see the reality on the day of judgment, and every community will be called to view their record, and God says they're going to pay for everything they had done. So every community at every point in time is going to be called to view their account on the day of judgment, according to the Quran. And this is why the title of the chapter is also kneeling. Verse 29, this is our record, and it utters the truth about you. We have been recording everything you did. As for those who believe and work righteousness, their Lord will admit them into His mercy. This is the great triumph. As for those who disbelieve, were not my revelations recited to you, but you turned arrogant and were wicked people? When it is proclaimed that God's promise is the truth, that the hour of judgment is inevitable, you said, we do not know what the hour is. We are full of conjecture about it. We are not certain. The evils of their work will become evident to them, and the very things they mocked will come back to haunt them. It will be proclaimed, today we forgot you, just as you forgot the meeting of this day. Your abode is a hellfire, and you will have no helpers. This is because you took God's revelations in vain, and were preoccupied with the first life. Consequently, they will never exit therefrom, nor will they be excused. To God belongs all praise, Lord of the heavens, Lord of the earth, Lord of the universe. To Him belongs all supremacy in the heavens and the earth. He is the Almighty, most wise. So, it's really very self-explanatory, these verses. God is, letting us know that on the day of judgment, the truth will become evident, and people will be judged according to their actions. People who worked evil, their evils will become evident to them. They will realize, if it's not evident to them now, it will become evident to them on the day of judgment that what they had been doing was pure evil, and that they actually deserve to, suffer in hell. And the things that they mocked, the teachings that they mocked, and the people that they mocked, the messengers that they mocked, all of that will come back to haunt these people, right? And if anybody has ever felt, haunted by any of their memories in the past, can relate to this, but it's very sad to, if you try to put yourself in the position of someone who is going to go to hell, and how their mind is going to feel on that day. It's going to be, there's nothing good about it, right? But, everything on top of everything else is just unbelievable, It's very hard to imagine, and God is going through details so that we think about these things. We think about these things, right? Because it is important, once we truly understand the gravity of the situation, only then we can, do more to appreciate God, and, be more mindful about our actions and about our day-to-day activities and our thoughts. So, and this is what God says will be proclaimed, that we forgot you, just as you forgot the meaning of this day, and you're going to burn in your abode is a hellfire. You will have no helpers. Right? This is the news that they get on the day of judgment. So how will they feel that their abode is the hellfire? They will stay in it forever, and that they will not have any helpers in this world. They will have nobody to help them. Imagine being in a position in life where you have nobody to help you, and you're just in misery. How bad is that alone, right? And then they have that for the rest of their eternity, because they were preoccupied with the first life, because they took God's revelations in vain. Was it not easier for them and much better for them if they just followed God's commandments, and they would be happy in this world, and then in the hereafter they would have so much happiness? It would have been so much better for them, right? They would have evaded all the misery, all of this regret, and the eternal misery, and instead they would have a very happy life. And that's what God wants from us. That's why God has given us the scripture. But because the people are evil, they are prevented from even appreciating God's mercy, this chance that God has given us, so we can fix our actions before it's too late. So, God willing, with this, I will continue reading next surah, Surah 46, the Dunes, Al-Ahqaf. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. HM. The revelation of this scripture is from God, the Almighty, most wise. We did not create the heavens and the earth and everything between them except for a specific purpose and for a finite interim. Those who disbelieve are totally oblivious to the warnings given to them. Say, consider the idols you have set up beside God. Show me what on earth did they create? Do they own part of the heavens? Show me any other scripture before this one, or any piece of established knowledge that supports your idolatry, if you are truthful. The idols totally unaware. Who is farther astray than those who idolize beside God? Idols that can never respond to them until the day of resurrection, and are totally unaware of their worship. The idols disown their worshippers, and when the people are summoned on the day of judgment, their idols will become their enemies and will denounce their idolatry. When our revelations were recited to them, perfectly clear, those who disbelieve said of the truth that came to them, this is obviously magic. So, subhanAllah, I mean, this is one of the HM initial chapters, as we know, one of the 4 consecutively HM initial chapters that have an interlocking relationship, in regards to the mathematical miracle of the Quran with number 19, with the frequency of initials, add up to be multiples of 19. And you can see more details about that in Appendix 1, if you're new to the mathematical miracle. And even if you're not new, I mean, just going back and reading about it, it's going to reassure your hearts, as God says. And so this, and it points out to us that the revelation of the scripture is from God, the Almighty Most Wise. So we have no doubt about it that, this is from God. When we appreciate, the mathematical structure of the Quran and the code. And God is reminding us here again that God created everything for a specific purpose, as we also read in the previous surah. The purpose of us being here is the specific purpose that we talked about earlier, which is to get paid for our actions, to get paid for what we believe, and for a very finite interim, we're not going to be here forever. So we should live accordingly. Think of life as something that's not going to be here forever. Most people stay in this world with the mindset that they're going to be here forever. Like God says, when these people that they build their mansions, as if they were going to last forever. Like they spend so much money, so much effort into these things, like that they think that they will last forever. But once you realize that this is temporary, like if you go camping, you're not going to build yourself a castle because you're going to go camping there for 3 days, right? You're just going to put up a tent, let's say, and if you're not staying at a hotel. So that's because that this is temporary. I mean, you're not going to spend all this money on something and then just pass, and then just waste, all your time and effort in building that, right? Just for 3 days, So you're going to put up a tent and then you're going to wrap it up and you're going to leave because you understand that you're not staying here for a very long time. But, people invest in this world, as if they're going to live in this world forever, and we have to remember that, whatever we're doing in this world, is just know how long it's going to be there for you. And I guess people don't even realize how long they're here for, even if they are in this life, even if they're 50 years old, they don't realize, most people, because they're blinded, right? But when you think about it, really, it's really fast. This life is really fast, and it passes you very, very quickly, and it's very temporary. So we have to make sure that we do the right things. We spend time, we spend efforts in things that matter the most, which is in this case our hereafter. Because this is the main reason why we're here. So you would think that because the main purpose is to worship God, we would be putting most of our time and our effort in worshiping God. But that's not what everybody's doing. Yes, a person who's worshiping God alone person who's a submitter is trying to do that, but a person who is the average person outside isn't. It's not even on their minds, you know, and they're just living in this world thinking that they're here for this, and they just want to make a difference. If they're really, trying to be self-aware, they'll be like, oh yeah, I want to make a difference. I want to end starvation. I want to make the world a better place, and stuff like that. But they're not. They're not caring about what is at stake here and what they really have to focus on, and why they're here, right? But God has given us this information now, and we understand that. But the sad part is, obviously, worst part is for people who think that they're on the right path, who think they're worshiping God, but then they have all these idols, and God says these idols that people have set up. I mean, none of those idols. I mean, God says, show me what on earth they have created. Like even people who worship Muhammad or Jesus, they think that God created it for them, right? But they say they are gods, but then they say that God created it for them. Then why didn't they just create it themselves if they were gods? Why did someone else had to do it for them, right? They did not even create anything, as much as people love Jesus or Muhammad or any of the saints for that matter. They don't even think, they know for a fact that they did not create anything. Like nobody will say that Jesus created the heavens and the earth. Nobody will say Muhammad created it. They will say God created it for Muhammad or for Jesus, but they're not going to say that they created them. So God says, what kind of gods are they when they didn't even create anything? How did you make them gods? What is God to you? Where, these people, they cannot even respond to you. I mean, you can call on them, but they will not respond to you. They're not even aware of your worship. They have no idea, Imagine, you're dedicating your whole life to these idols, but the idols have no clue that you're thinking about them, right? I mean, people are sending their salutations to Muhammad. This one submitter sent me a song the other day saying, oh, enjoy this song about God. But their language is not Arabic, but the song was in Arabic, and then it was commemorating Muhammad. And so I told them, but this just reminds me that they're just dedicating their whole life to commemorating these idols. Like they can't even worship God without mentioning those idols in their songs even. And God says that they're not even aware of their worship. They're singing songs about them day and night, and these people don't even know that they're worshiping them. And on the day of judgment, God says they'll become their enemies. Like Jesus will disown these people, Muhammad will disown these people and curse them even. Like they don't want anything to do with idol worshippers, and these people are worshiping them and just incurring misery on themselves. So it's not going to help them in any way. And God says when our revelations try to them perfectly clear, they reject those revelations, and so what can they expect? Just misery. And this is just very sad for them, because they feel that they have the truth, and they feel that they will be forgiven, and that they feel that they are the chosen ones and they're invincible. But it doesn't matter what you think. What you think in your mind is not what shapes the reality. It's not going to change what happens tomorrow. What happens tomorrow is what is decided by God, and it's based on how these people lived, what these people believed, where they put their money, right? Figuratively speaking, right? And so that's why we have to remember that we can't be wishful thinkers and think that whatever we decide becomes religion. It's what God has said. It's what God has said. God says that He's the creator of the heavens and the earth. God says that we're here for a purpose. The hereafter is going to come. That's why we're here. When we'll be judged, we'll have to face the hereafter, and then our ranks are going to be decided. And anybody who worships any idols besides God, they're not going to make it. They can think whatever they want, but God says it's all wishful thinking, and on the day of judgment, they're going to have to face the reality. So may God allow us to, do the right things always and do what's most pleasing to God. With this, I'll end, and if you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Subhanallah. Thank you, brother.
Mashallah, thank you.
MashaAllah, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, mashallah.
MashaAllah, brother. Very good study.
Mashallah, thanks.
And the people, they are suffering there in Gaza. And I know that in one of the videos Dr. Rashad is mentioning, if I'm not mistaken, it is the video where it's about God of Chaos, if I'm not mistaken. Something like that, yeah. I think it was that one.
King of
Where he
Chaos?
says that, sorry?
King of Chaos, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, King of Chaos, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, King of Chaos. And then, he says something there. He says that, submitters, they know that God is doing everything. He's running everything. So if something happens, like in the world, a tornado, or wars going on, people are dying, they know that actually God is doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the things that are happening right now in Gaza, of course, we know God is doing it, but um, so should we, like, I want to know how we need to act if things like this are happening. Like, we shouldn't be people that, don't care about the things that are going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that the messenger is not, he didn't meant to say, like, okay, God is doing it, so you shouldn't be active in helping people or, saying it's bad, what is happening there in Gaza
Right.
or in any other place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to know, how should we act actually? Should we be
Mm-hmm.
more active in this cause? Should we do more than that we are doing already? Because I feel, especially for myself, like when these kind of things are happening, because of the things that the messenger has told us and that we have learned, like we definitely know God is in control. He is doing all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we try to help. We do, I'm talking about myself. Like I try to help, of course, but we can do actually more, maybe. And then on the other hand, I'm thinking, okay, but God knows better. All the people who are dying before the age of 40, the kids and everything, they're gonna go to heaven. So, but is there a specific thing that we need to do? Like, uh, I don't know if my question is like very clear, but.
Mm-hmm. When you say is there a specific thing that we need to do, like what do you mean?
I don't know, like, should we be more active? Like, should we do more than that we already are doing? Like, for example, at the moment, the best I can do is actually help people with money, maybe, right? But I cannot go there and then have a fight, right? I cannot go and try to protect the people, you see?
Right.
So, mm, but
Right.
I don't know, is there more than the things that we already know, or?
Right.
Uh,
Well, I think it's a good question in the sense that we need to have a little bit of a balance here, right? So, like, I remember early on, like when this stuff started happening, and I was making some posts about it. One person who's not here with us anymore, if you remember, he objected and said like why I was talking so much about this stuff. Do you remember? You don't remember?
No, but which one, brother?
Okay.
Like what the topic was
Yeah,
about,
the topic was
what
about.
happened in Gaza?
Well, the topic was a general topic, right? It came about a submitter and not having empathy towards what was happening to him. If
Mm.
you remember, right?
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, now I remember. Yeah, now
Right.
I remember it. You're right, you're
Right,
right.
right. So, I mean, the thing is that everything that's going on in this world, right? Everything that happens to every single person, everything is controlled by God, right? So even if a submitter needs help or a disbeliever is in trouble, all of that is controlled by God, right? But like there's a verse in the Quran where where they say that why should we feed those whom God could feed if He wanted, right? This is one of the utterance of the disbelievers, or God could guide if He wanted. Why should we preach to those that whom God could guide if He wanted? So the thing is, like, while everything is predetermined by God, even the things like, let's say, fighting against diseases like AIDS and cancer, right? Like, I think this was one of the questions that was posed to the messenger of the covenant too. It's like, okay, Satan wants to make his subjects happy, and he wants diseases like AIDS and cancer and stuff like that, to go away. But so someone may ask, like, well, can I still like do research against cancer? Because am I helping Satan in that sense? So they said, so I mean, his answer was no. I mean, you can still do all the righteous works that you feel, but this in the I mean the big I mean I'm just paraphrasing, right? But the big picture, I mean, it's not even going to make a difference in that sense. And the thing is, that is in accordance with God's will. But your actions, righteous actions, whether it's about helping anybody in trouble or anything else, is your righteous act. It doesn't have to do with what Satan is trying to do in the big picture. I mean, and I'm kind of butchering the whole thing, I know, and making it more
Yeah, I
complicated.
think it was deep, brother. I think
Right.
that's what you're thinking of when he asked that. He was trying to say we shouldn't feed people because and in the messenger, or he asked if he would be helping Satan by feeding hungry people, and then Rashad said he said the verse you had just quoted about like how the disbelievers say, "Oh, if God willed, He could have fed these people." I think so.
Yeah. So the thing is, our efforts, regardless of what is happening, our efforts are for us, right? So if you help someone, whether they're in Gaza or your home or your neighborhood, whether you're feeding them or helping them with money, whatever it is you're doing, I mean, that doesn't matter. It's for your benefit, right, with God. So
Yeah, but the question is like, do we need to do specifically something like which is a command of God, which is written in the Quran, or the messenger maybe gave an example of like in these situations we need to act and do like this,
Well, I mean,
specifically.
right. So, I mean, I think that's just for every person to decide for themselves how they, in what position they are in to help in what situation, right? But I think the general commandments are clear for us. Like, for example, if someone's in need or needs our zakat or, obligatory charity, I mean, or other charity, you go by the order, and then after the order, you can help other people too. And the thing, but when it comes to war, obviously, and these people are not believers, I mean, you don't have to fight with them, right? If they're submitters and they need your help, that's another thing, right? But
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
like if they're submitters, you want
yeah,
to stick up for them, but
yeah. Like if, let's say, submitters were under attack in Turkey, and they would be persecuted, then you would say, like, okay, and they're asking for your help to come and help them. You could go and fight with them, uh, as such. But that's not the case here, right? So, but you could still help them if you wanted to. I mean, that's just, but you're not obligated to, right? Is what I'm trying to say. So, but you can always do whatever you like to do. I mean, it's just like every other thing. It's not like if anybody's under attack that submitters have to go and help them and fight for them or something. But if
uh,
yeah,
yeah, there's like charities too. I think I've seen like on TikTok this one family. Like this guy's a pretty honest guy. I think Suleman, you know who I'm talking about, the solar guy. But like there's little ways where you can pitch in for these GoFundmes for these people to escape. Like for example, and whether it produces something or not, it's kind of like how God tells us in the Quran. Like He gives us a lot of chances to earn, credits. Like it was not you who struck them, but it was God. But He gives the believers chance. So, obviously we're not over there with weapons or anything, and they're not coming after submitters. But Like there's other ways I think to strive, kind of like you were
Mm.
saying, like donating, Brother Joffrin, and yes, Suleiman's had real good points.
Yeah, mashallah. But we also need to be a little bit careful when, giving money to these organizations who
Mm-hmm.
help other people. Because, I did this for many, many long years. I had this friend of mine who was a traditional Sunni guy, which is really into this Sunni religion. And, he had his team and people helping a lot of people all around the world. But then I don't know if you guys remember, but I asked actually I had a
Mm.
question about this. I said I'm giving
Mm.
money to him, but he's a Sunni, etc. So basically, the main thing was that even if the money goes to the people who really need them, and even if they are doing their job, still they are promoting their own religion, based
Mm-hmm.
on those things. So, like in that case, I'm always very careful now. It's
Mm.
actually important that we don't help promote them their religion in this way either. So and that's why maybe the messenger also says, he says that we need to know the people who really need the money, and we need to make sure that it comes to those who are really in need. We should know about that. And giving money to these people is sometimes also very difficult to know if the money really goes there. That's also another point that we need to understand and know before doing that kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, very true. I just heard too, like Red Cross. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, brother. What translation was that? But yeah, Red Cross is they supposedly, I've heard this from a few people, like in person, old timer, that said like the Red Cross organization pockets like the vast majority of the money, and so the actual funding that's given to people via Red Cross is it's like only 5 or 10%. Like it's so corrupt, and it doesn't surprise me because I mean this is like Red Cross is a huge mainstream quote unquote charity organization, but just touching on your point, Brother Jaffer, about being careful, it's very true.
Yeah, mashallah, thank you for the answers, brother.
Yeah. I think what God doesn't want us to do is be apathetic towards, or be cold-hearted towards the situation. Just because we understand that God is doing everything doesn't mean that we're okay with oppression and murder, etc. Especially for submitters, and this is especially true for submitters in the U.S. because it puts them in a very different position, specifically because they feel like we pay taxes that are being used actively against these people to fund oppression and murder and stuff, right? So they feel responsible in a way that they have to speak up about that and oppose it. So sometimes people don't even understand that. Like when people in America are protesting, they're protesting and speaking up against it, just not because they're supporting them or the Sunni Muslims or because they're supporting a terrorist organization, etc. They're doing it because they want to make it clear that they don't want to be a part of something evil, a part of a regime that is supporting, using their money to cause all this stuff, right? Because that means that if you don't condemn these types of things, you're being okay with it, right? Like God says, do not be. Sorry, I don't want to misquote the verse, but the verse that says, be careful of retribution that may not be limited to the evildoers among you. And the footnote says, a community that tolerates homosexuality may be hit by an earthquake, right? So now, in this particular situation with Gaza, let's say, I mean, people in the U.S. are are complicit in this when their tax dollars are going to fund, this stuff. So it is incumbent upon them to speak up against this stuff and say that they're not okay with it, right? Because their money is being used against their will to go and fund this stuff. So at least they have to express their discontent with what's going on. in these places with their money, right? And then like what happened before, like some people may question, like why are you so concerned about what's happening to those people? Like you have nothing to do with it. But in this situation, I mean, as people living in the U.S., they have a lot to do with it because it's their money that's being used to do all that, right? But as far as the people in Gaza and stuff, like um, the verse that was pointed out was 22:40, right? They were evicted from their home unjustly for no reason other than saying our Lord is God. But it says, if it were not for God's support of some people against others, monasteries, churches, synagogues, and masjids, where the name of God is commemorated frequently, would have been destroyed. Absolutely, God supports those who support Him. God is powerful, almighty. So the thing is that it says God supports those who support Him, right? But if you look at the people of Gaza, who are the Arabs, right? God says that the Arabs are worse in hypocrisy. So they're not actually with God, and God does not support them because of it, right? Because if God supported them, they would have been winners. Doesn't mean that God supports Israel, but the thing is, God is not supporting them either because they are also on the wrong path, and they have the Quran, they have the Arabic Quran that was given to them, and they decided to ignore, the revelation. So they are in a worse position because of it, and they're, as a result, they're being subject to oppression, murder, and all this stuff, and they're asking help from everybody. And as much as people want to help them, like they're still not getting the help that would get them to be victorious, right? So God is not really supporting them because they're not supporting God. There's not a single Arab, who identifies as a submitter. And when we say Arab, we're talking about the Arabian Peninsula. So not a single person among these people who identifies as a submitter. They're all worshiping Muhammad along with God, right? So if it was God alone, they would definitely not be in this position. But nevertheless, as submitters, we don't approve of victimization and murder and stealing people's properties and imprisoning them and torturing them, no matter who they are, right? So that's why if our monies are involved in doing something like that, I think it makes sense for us to at least let the world know that we're not okay with it, just so we can save ourselves.
Yeah, brother. And I think like one of the most important things is actually like the knowledge that you get from God, because having the right knowledge is also, knowing the truth is actually a blessing from God, right? Because a lot of people, the messenger explains that they don't really know what's going on. Like you said, people, they think that, they talk about the big picture, but they don't have a clue about the big picture. The reason why we are here in this world, So for submitters, knowing the truth, knowing the big picture behind the things that are going on in this whole world is actually a great blessing. So we know that God is in control. We know that He's doing everything, and everything is according to His, decisions that God is making. So that's also a great blessing for us. And said that it's also going to, because like where you have also people who are in a depression because how the world is, right? They for example, in Turkey, a lot of people are in that state because every time when they open the TV and the news, there are always bad things going on. So it makes them like they're very depressed. I can say the same thing for like our neighbors, all people who, if something happens, they're immediately frightened and depressed because they don't know what's really going on. So submitters who know that God is running and doing everything. So this is basically, I think, one of the biggest reasons is for our own happiness. I think that God has given us this knowledge.
Exactly.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, mashallah. I mean, it reminds me when the Messenger of the Covenant was talking about this, and he says, even if, like, like if everybody around you, I'm trying to remember the analogy he gave, right? But I think he was talking about everyone in Tucson. He says that everywhere around you, it's like people are dying, and you still be happy, like nothing's going on,
Yeah, it was in the same thing that I mentioned. Like
right.
that was the main topic, what he was talking about. That things are happening in the world, bad stuff, etc. But you still are happy because you know that God is in control. And he said like that you are happy. So what I understand from that, it doesn't mean that because we know what is really going on, doesn't mean that we need to be like people who don't care about anything and we shouldn't help no one because God is in control, so I'm not going to send money or I'm not going to help people. Right?
Right.
That's the main thing, basically, what I understood from that video. And the question was based on this, actually, brother.
Inshallah. Yeah, mashallah, it's a good question.
Yeah, like Brother Mardani, it was actually a little bit his question as well. We were talking about this today, actually. So, and then you were reading these verses about the people from Israel and and the things that were going on, etc. So, yeah, and it was like you almost answered all the questions basically while reading the verses and talking about it, actually, brother. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. And we were messaging each other like, oh, here you have the answer already, actually. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if he has like more. Yeah, if Mardani has more questions, if it's all clear to him. So, brother, you can also ask if you want, like if things are not clear or you want to add things. Oh, mashallah, brother.
Yeah, so what was the discussion?
Yeah, so like we're talking all the time about the things that are going on in this world, and for example, that war is nearby, the third world war is coming, etc. So like I am a little bit more positive about things because I see the world actually going to the right way instead of the other way, especially because what the messenger has told about the world accepting submission, and like we have like around 14 years left that it's going to happen. So everything that happens is actually going to be a reason why people are going to accept, why the world is going to accept submission. All right. So for me, it's really positive. And then when these kind of things are happening, we are discussing like, okay, what should we do now? Like, we know that God is in control; He's doing everything. But is there still specific things that we need to do when this kind of things happen? Like we have other, like in the Quran, God is clear about, right? About, for example, the hypocrites. He says you need to act in this way, you need to do this and this, right? So, and then we wondered, like, is there a specific thing that we need to do about, for example, the war that's going on in Gaza and in Israel? and like we have also a lot of Jewish customers and Jewish friends as well, you know, like I have designers and customers and people whom we work with specifically because like we work in an area where you have a lot of Jewish people, and like most of them they are not really like enemies, like they are not being bad towards us, of course, so we can still be friends with them. And you know, they are not submitters, they are Jews, they have their own opinions about Gaza and people in Gaza, etc. So like
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, the thing is, God has made the religion easy, and then also, there are a lot of things that are not mandatory, right? And they're left up to individual to do at their capacity whatever they can, whenever they can, if they want, things like that too, right? So, like what you mentioned about Gaza, for example, I mean, you don't have to, but the thing is, like, you can if you want to, like, if you want to help somebody or something like that, right? I mean, God encourages you to help people, right, in the order that you need to help them. So if you're in a position where you have someone, let's say a close relative or something, who might be going through that in this situation, you could help them, right, in that situation. But if not, then you have to help your relatives first and your close ones first, right? But at the same time, I mean, if you were in a position, let's say you were someone like, Elon Musk or something, right? So I mean, you would be in a different position to do something, right? Than say Jaffer, right? So, but the thing is, that is all left up to you and what you want to do. I mean, if you did something to help them, for example, it wouldn't be wrong. It would still count towards your credit. What I'm trying to say, right? Because
yeah, for your own soul, it's
yeah,
going to help
yeah,
your own soul, right?
but it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like it's an obligation that everybody has to do something.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we do things which is, it can be wrong, right? But you are doing it because of your good intention, and you don't know that what you're doing is
Yeah,
wrong. So God, of course,
yeah,
He says what counts is your intentions. So
yeah,
because a lot of people, they do good deeds, but their intentions are bad. So in that sense,
yeah,
yeah,
but
that's
yeah,
very
but
clear, mashallah.
also, but there's a distinction there. I've said that before many times, also, but is that your intentions matter when the deeds are good. When the deeds are
Yeah,
bad,
no, I was talking about
yeah,
mistakes. No, I
yeah,
was talking about like you are doing thing, but it's a mistake, when it's a mistake, and God knows, of
yeah,
course, it's a mistake, so you won't be held responsible for that. But you need to, of course, do tawbah and
yeah.
turn back and do the right things after you have learned that
Yeah,
it
but I
was a
mean, for
mistake, right?
example, like when
In
it
that
comes
sense.
to, let's say, when it comes to helping people too, right? God says that we have to be moderate too. So sometimes people can do these things with good intentions. I'm not saying you are doing it. I'm just giving a general example. But I'm saying, God says you give in moderation. So if someone doesn't give in moderation, he's extravagant, and so that comes in unappreciativeness. And God says the extravagant are the brethren of the devil. So they have to be careful. Like, for example, if someone decided to donate a big chunk of their wealth towards helping these people, and it is more than their fair share that they're deciding to give, then this would count against them, not towards them, right? Even though their intention was good to help people, but the action was bad, you know.
Yeah, brother, mashallah. Yeah, and the brother had another question. It's about interest. He says, can you give me some more information about the interest rate? Up to what extent, brother? Because interest is still a big question mark for me.
Right. So what is the question for you?
Yeah, so he's asking basically what, in the explanations of Dr. Rashad, he's talking about interest rate. right? It's and then he's talking about usury, extended usury, like riba, you know, the word riba, etc. So he's asking about that. To what extent can we lend money or take money from the bank? If I'm not mistaken, it was 15 or
15 to
20%.
20%.
If it's above that, sorry.
Yeah, 15 to 20%.
Yeah, 15 to 20%. So when it's above that, then it's like not interest
Excessive,
anymore. It's
yeah.
like usury, yeah, excessive. Then it's excessive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's his question basically. He wants to know more about this topic.
Yeah, so if it's more than 15 to 20%, then it becomes usury, right? But even if you're in a position where you're forced to take it, I mean, like to get a loan that's, let's say the only loan that is available to you is one that is above 20%, based on your situation. Because usually when you're in a bad situation, you're not going to be able to get a good loan with a good interest rate. So, God understands that. But for someone who is in a position of lending, they can't lend you anything above with an expected interest rate of anything above, 15 to 20%. Because that becomes usury. So taking usury, the illicit earning where you're victimizing someone, that is wrong.
Yeah, and I wanted to add something. Like we discussed this a few studies before, and mashallah, like it was very, very helpful to understand this topic because, there are sometimes details that really matter, and one of those details was that the messenger is talking about, on a yearly basis, right? Because when you lend money or when you take money from the bank, you need to pay it with some kind of an interest rate, but then it's calculated on year basis. And, I always thought when you buy a house, let's say a house is $500,000 and then you're taking money from the bank for 30 years. And if you calculate the amount of money that you pay back to the bank, it's like the house is 500, but then you pay more than 500,000 on interest. So it's always almost more than $1 million. So, and that is, if you look at the rate, it's like more than 50-60%.
Yeah, but
So
it's not
then
a
you would
rate.
think,
Yeah, but it's not a rate at that point itself, percentage itself.
yeah, percentage, I mean, sorry.
Yeah.
So, and then, yeah, you're right. So basically that was the whole thing. And then that's what I thought when then I thought, okay, so it's not allowed to take money from the bank if it's for if it's going to be up more than 20%. But then we understood that it was like yearly basis, like it shouldn't be more than 20 to 30.
When we use the word rate, there's always a thing, like a rate per hour, kilometers per hour, like your speed has a rate, So your interest has, or when you talk about interest, that's different than talk about interest rate. Rate is like per year. And,
yes.
So you understand that's what it means.
Yeah. So, and if we can summarize this means that the percentage that you pay per year from the amount that you have taken from the bank, that shouldn't be more than 15 to 20%, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. So this means that you can buy a house which is like $500,000, and then even if it's for 30 years and you come up so what about the total of interest in 2030? Yeah, but brother, this is the answer to your question that we said you need to look at year basis. And then when you yeah, mashallah. Yeah, so that's basically the thing what the messenger was talking about on a year basis.
It's on a yearly basis, right? Not the whole thing.
Yeah, because when you imagine you're taking money from the bank, $500,000. Let me calculate. What is it actually? 500. Let me see. If you take 20, is it 100,000? It's around 100,000, right? If it's 20%, then you pay 100,000. But if you do this in 30 years, then you pay so less actually every month or every year that maybe there won't be a bank who is going to give you so much money. If it was otherwise, if it was less than that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope that answers this question. MashaAllah.
All right, I guess if there are no other comments or questions, God willing, we can conclude our study. So thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, brother. It was an amazing study. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam alaikum. God bless.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.